Tony here from Locks to Reads, day 15 of Remembrance Reads, so we are halfway through. Today I read one short story, 15 poems, and one chapter of a non-fiction book. I read from the Penguin collection of First World War stories. I read Mary Postgate by Rudyard Kipling. That's an odd story. It ends very darkly. It's almost like a horror story. I'm not going to. I can't really explain the story without. It's basically about a woman who is a companion to another elderly woman, a child that they look after who grows up and dies in a plane accident while training to be in the Royal Army, the RAF as will be, and then it's an odd story. It's very hard to process. It's disturbing and uncomfortable at the end. I found it very interesting and enjoyable read, but it is odd. And I'm going to say the word odd about 15 times without explaining why it's odd. I think it's just the juxtaposition of how the woman is presented at the start of the story and her actions at the end of the story. But I kind of enjoyed it. And then I read 15 poems from the collected poems of Isaac Rosenberg. The three best, in my opinion, were The Immortals, Break of Day in the Trenches, and Louse Hunting. I have read Louse Hunting on this channel before, I think in the last Remembrance Reads. It's a fantastic poem, but I think Break of Day in the Trenches is astonishingly good. If you can find it, you should be able to find it on the internet somewhere. You should read it because it's very, very good. And then I read chapter 2 of Heroes Twilight by Bernard Bergonzi, which is this slim volume of literary criticism or radical perspectives on poetry, fiction, and autobiographical writing of First World War. Chapter 2 is called Preludes, and it sort of looks at the influences and context of Britain in 1914. As he says, it's very easy let's say I'm going to say it's very easy from 2025 to look back at England in 1914 as some kind of paradise, sunny skies, beer, pubs open all day, when actually Britain in 1914 was, well, let me read the quote from Bernard Bergonzi. The stability of English life was threatened by a triple outbreak of violence, from industrial troubles, from the suffragette movement, and from a Tory revolt over Ulster. Now, two things to say here. One, it's actually incredibly easy how we have forgotten how violent the suffragette movement actually was, and how they've been painted retrospectively as a sort of mild protest movement, when in fact they were bombing things, burning things down, and other such sort of actions. And also, what is also forgotten is that if there hadn't been war in 1914, it's perfectly possible there would have been a civil war in Ireland, over Ulster, and the British Army couldn't necessarily be trusted to support a government policy on that. And in some respects, that was finished by, I suppose in a way it was only postponed until 1917 and beyond, and into the 20s. So Britain in 1914 wasn't a glorious pastoral land of peace and quiet. It was bubbling. Violence was bubbling under. He then talks about the thread of fiction that was coming out, that was sort of what we'll call invasion fiction. stories about how Britain would fall to a foreign invader because it wasn't taking its own safety seriously. One of the earliest ones is the Battle of Dorking, which was written in 1871, which is about a Prussian invasion of England, um, uh, which succeeds in conquering southern England, basically. But there's also others. Through War of the Worlds. War of the Worlds is a part of that pattern, except that Wells chooses to make the invading enemy aliens, Martians, not Prussians or French or Russians or Americans. And one of the most famous books of that, apart from All the Worlds, I suppose, of that sort of type of book is Erskine Childer's The Riddle of the Sands from 1903. I've read that book. It's kind of like a boy's own adventure in some respects. It's about some English men who go sailing off the coast of Holland and Germany, but who stumble across an attempt to invade England via a naval build-up, and it's a sort of spy thriller adventure. It's actually it's a very good book, actually. I recommend it. But there was that was going on in the background as well. There was a sort of assumption, a sort of subconscious assumption that some kind of war was coming, and it might not end in Britain's favour. There was this. It was sort of comparing Britain's lack of conscription and a lack of a large standing army with Prussia, with France, with most of the continent of Europe had conscription and a large standing army. We were reliant on our navy, which is one of the reasons why our clash with Germany became built up was the great naval battle between the two in terms of building ships and building more ships and building more ships. As each country announced they were going to build 4 battleships, the other one would say they were going to build 6, etc., etc., etc. And it was in Britain's interest to have as large a fleet as possible. In fact, I think there was a rule. I can't remember what the exact name of the rule was, that the British Navy had to be as big as the next 2 navies combined to be safe and secure. So a lot of money was spent on building ships, and this is the time of dreadnoughts and the conversion of the navy from coal to oil. That might have come later, actually. Now I think about it, don't quote me on that. But some of the problems in the Middle East spring from that decision. And then there's a final little section on the sort of some artistic movements where violence and machinization were part of their story. So vorticism and futurism, which are both interesting art movements, and futurism in particular, which had a sort of many of its adherents lent to the sort of fascism in Italy, but it's an interesting chapter because it makes you question your perception of what Britain was like in 1914, like the way it's the way it's talked about mythologically. I like Bergonzi's writing style. It's a less academic than Fussel's was. It's more direct and straightforward. The chapters are a bit shorter as well. The next chapter is called Poets 1, Brooke Grenfell Sawley. Some of whom are, but I suspect Brooke is of the 3 is now the only well-known one in 2025. Grenfell and Sawley less so. But yeah, it's an interesting way of reviewing your perceptions of a time period. The Strange Death of Liberal England, to quote a book written at the time. at the title of a book written at the time. So there you go. That's what I read today. Tomorrow I will hopefully read some more because I had things to do today, and people to see, places to go. Tomorrow I'm going to focus on finishing the collected Isaac Rosenberg, and making a dent in Heroes Twilight. I've also got an author interview agreed, which I'll make a proper announcement about later when I've sort of firmed up how the hell I'm going to do it. And that means I need to focus my reading on another book, which I will start tomorrow. And there we go. I hope you've had a good day, and I will speak to you all tomorrow. Bye bye.